Hi,
My name's JC McCauley.
I'm Naisha McCauley, and you're watching AccessTV.org.
Good morning, and welcome again to Miss Cleo's Storytelling Corner. It's so wonderful to see you again today. Oh, it's looking like fall. Fall is coming. School is in. But story time never ends. We always have story time. So our first story today is going to be a Brer Rabbit story. You know Brer Rabbit, that mischievous rabbit that's always doing something sneaky to somebody else. Remember him? I'm sure some of you do. And if this is the first time you have an adventure, you're going to have an adventure today. You're going to meet Brer Rabbit. Well, the first story I'm going to tell you is Brer Rabbit's Laughing Place. Now, you know, every once in a while the animals would get together, but this day they got together and they were arguing about who could laugh the loudest. Well, they all said, I could laugh louder than you. I could laugh louder than everybody. I could laugh over everybody. They just kept on going and going and going until there was almost a fight. And well, Brer Bear says, hold it. Why don't we just have a laughing convention? And the animals thought that was a wonderful idea. Well, Brer Rabbit said, that's not so wonderful. That was a very good idea, they said to Brer Bull. We like that idea. Brer Rabbit said, Brer Bull's not intelligent, ain't never been intelligent, and never will be intelligent. And everybody knows that Monkey is the laughingest person, the laughingest person on the planet, on this side of Earth. Everybody know that. And the animals started to think about it, and they said, that's the truth. Monkey is the laughingest person. That is the truth. They kind of felt kind of embarrassed that they didn't think of Monkey in the first place. They say, well, yeah, that's right, they said. So, Brer Rabbit says, well, everybody should have a laughing place of their very own that nobody could take away from them, that just belongs to them. And the animal said, I never heard of that. What's that? Brer Rabbit? You got a laughing place? I sure do. Well, could we go? Now, you think I'm going to take all y'all to my laughing place so you could just laugh around, jump around, and just take up all the laughs of how they know laughing for me? But I'll take one of you. So they got together and said, well, who's going to go with Brer Rabbit to his laughing place? And they got to arguing again. And then they decided, well, let Brer Rabbit decide. So Brer Rabbit said, well, I'll take Brer Fox. Well, they was kind of thinking that it should be Brer Fox anyway. So they all agreed. And Brer Rabbit said, I want you to meet me at Lucy's Carson at noon. Brer Fox said, okay, and Brer Fox was there. And he got there and he looked around and he said, hey, I don't see nothing to make me laugh. What's Brer Rabbit talking about? Brer Rabbit, he led him into a patch, a briar's patch. Uh-huh. And it had bamboo. It was a bamboo briar, a blackberry bush, a honeysuckle, all tangled all up into a pine, all into a pine thicket. He said, now, Brer Fox, this is what you gonna do. You gonna start a running, and you gonna run and run this way and run that way, and you just gonna keep on running, and you'll find you laughing. Well, Brer Fox said, before I left the house today, my wife said, watch out for Brer Rabbit. But, if I don't go, what's gonna happen? If I don't go, they all say I'm scared. I guess Brer Fox didn't have any choice. So he took off for racing, and he ran around in a circle, and he ran around in a square, and he kept on running, and he kept on running, and he got the triangle, a tie ride. He just kept on running, and he was having himself a good time doing all this running, but he didn't see that low branch that he was about to come to, that he hit his head on and busted that hornet hive. And them hornets was on him, all over him. And he was a hollering and a yipping and a rolling, and he was doing all kinds of things to get away from them hornets. And Brer Rabbit was laughing and laughing, and he was laughing. Oh, and Brer Fox, he just kept running, kept doing that. Finally, I guess them hornets got enough of fox flesh, and they left. And Brer Fox was so mad. I mean, he was so mad, he busted up. He was about to bust. And he looked at Brer Rabbit and said, this ain't no laughing place. What you mean? Brer Rabbit said, yes, it is a laughing place. You forget what I said. I said, this is my laughing place, not your laughing place. And of course, you know, everybody knows that a fox don't have a sense of humor anyway. And Brer Rabbit just went away, just a smiling and a laughing. And he said, you know, everybody got to find their own laughing place. And that is the story of Brer Rabbit's laughing place. Now, what do you think of that? But you know what I think? I think the animal should know Brer Rabbit by now that he has something up his sleeve every single time, and he does not play. You know it's gonna be you that does not get the last laugh. Yes, sir. Now I have another story to tell you. Oh, I got to stop laughing. And it's not as funny. It's about King Solomon. You know, he was a very wise king. Yes, he was. And, you know, he was at a party or a feast, as they said in those days. He was at a feast, and he was having a good time. And he heard the head of his guards, Benaniah, say, I have not failed the king, not one time. I have fulfilled every task that the king has ever given me. King Solomon heard this, and he says, you know, I think Benaniah needs a little humbleness. I think he needs to be humble. But Benaniah loved to please the king. So the king called him. Benaniah, come here. He had an idea. He was going to give him a task he could not ever accomplish. He said, Benaniah, I want you to go find me a ring. A magic ring that makes happy people sad and sad people happy. Benaniah never heard of such a ring. But he was willing. He was going. He said, yes, my king, I shall go and bring back your ring. And he looked all through Jerusalem, all the shopkeepers, all the caravans, all the little merchants, all the people. He just searched and searched and searched, and he could not find this ring. He could not even find a person that ever even heard of such a ring. So he said to himself, it must be that it's from another land. Yes, it has to be another land, he said. So he went to other lands, and he searched and he searched and he searched, and the king had only given him 6 months to find this ring, and his time was running short, and he looked and he looked and he looked, and he could not find the ring, and the time was running short, and he was downhearted, and he said to himself, this is the first time that I have not been able to please the king. And he started home. The 6 months were almost up. And when he saw this little boy walking with trinkets in his hands, he looked and he says, well, I must try every avenue. I must try everything. So he asked the little boy, well, little boy, have you ever heard of a ring that makes happy people sad and sad people happy? Do you have a ring like that? The little boy said, no, I've never heard of such a ring. But Benaniah got even more disappointed. And he turned and he started home. But the little boy's grandfather heard, and he says, what kind of ring? What kind of ring are you looking for? I'm looking for a ring that makes happy people sad and sad people happy. So the old man said, wait just a minute. Wait just a minute. And he went and got an old tarnished gold ring, and he wrote something in it. And he gave it to Benaniah. Well, Benaniah read it. He smiled. He was so happy. And he went back to the king. And that next day, when he got there, the king was having a great feast. And he was so jolly and so happy and talking and laughing. And when he saw Benaniah from afar, he said, I will not make him suffer too much longer. When he comes, I will tell him that it was not fair, but I sent him on a journey that he could not fulfill, and I will apologize. But he's going to say, I'll say to him, I wanted you to be more humble, Benaniah. So he said, Benaniah, come. And Benaniah came, and he was so happy, and he handed the king the ring. And the king took the ring, and he said, Benaniah. And then he turned the ring around and around, and he read what it said inside. and his face got sad. And he looked at Benadiah, and the ring said, "This too shall pass." And he thought of all the wonderful things that he had, and the wonderful time he was having, and all his wonderful possessions. And he looked down at the ring, and it says, "This too will pass." And tears came to him, and he gave Benadiah a great hug, and he took off his ruby ring and put it on Benadiah's hand. And he took the gold band and he put it on his finger. And King Saul wore the magic ring from then on, for it offered him wisdom and balance all the days of his life. This too shall pass. That's something that we should remember when we're down and out. But I never thought of saying that or thinking about that when I thought of a wealthy, well-to-do person. But it's also true for them also. This too will pass. So that would make a rich man sad, and a poor man going through trials and tribulations of life would make him happy, just like Benadiah. And that's our story for today. And I have more stories for you, or one more story for you, but let's take a commercial break, and I'll be right back.
Hi, my name is Cammie Starks. I would recommend any parent to participate in this program due to the fact that it helps us learn about what the kids are learning, and also to better our children in the community. And I just give thanks to Lucy, that recommended me to come to the program, and it's just been an honor, and finding out the development of the children of the school systems that's very needed. And I just give thanks, and I ask that any parent, friends, family to participate, because it's very helpful to find out what's going on with the children and also to help the children. And I just give thanks.
Welcome back to Miss Cleo's Storytelling Corner. I have a little history to tell you this morning on poetry from the masters. And I'm going to tell you about Claude McCauley, who was born in 1889 and died in 1948. During World War II, Winston Churchill recited a poem to inspire and rally his country in its war against Germany. The poem's defiant tone and call to fight against seemingly insurmountable odds helped it become one of the unofficial rally cries of the Allied forces, entitled "If We Must Die." The poem was written by Claude McCauley, often referred to as the first poet of the Harlem Renaissance. "If We Must Die" was published in The Liberator in 1919, written in response to racial violence against African Americans during that year. It was one of the earliest race-conscious poems of the Harlem Renaissance. Although African Americans are not referred to specifically, If We Must Die is considered by some critics to be among the first militant poems of the Harlem Renaissance. McCauley published his most important collection of poetry, Harlem Shadows, in 1922. Some critics credit it with ushering in the Harlem Renaissance and showing that racial issues can be viable subjects for serious poetry. Harlem Shadows grew out of McCauley's desire to place If We Must Die in a book. About 1/3 of the poems in the collection focus on the plight and conditions of African Americans. McCauley traveled extensively. In 1922, after the release of Harlem Shadows, he went to Russia, where he became a celebrity. He also traveled to France, Spain, and Morocco, spending a total of 12 years touring Europe and North Africa. During this time, McCauley wrote 3 novels, Home to Harlem in 1928, Banjo in 1929, and Banana Bottom in 1933, and a collection of short stories, Gingertown, in 1932. Claude McCauley was born in Jamaica in 1889, the youngest of 11 children. At 17, he became an apprentice to a wheelwright and carpet maker, and at 19, he was hired as a police constable in Kingston, Jamaica. While in Kingston, he was encouraged to write by an English collector of island folklore. In 1912, the collector helped McCauley publish 2 books of poetry, Songs of Jamaica and Constab Ballads. The latter book won an award from the Jamaican Institute of Arts and Sciences. McCauley used the cash grant that came with the award to pay for tuition to Tuskegee Institute. He attended Tuskegee briefly before transferring to Kansas State College. He left for Harlem after 2 years to continue his writing career. While in Harlem, McCauley worked as a waiter and a porter while he continued to write. In 1917, 2 of his sonnets were published in the 7 Arts magazine, garnering him wide recognition. Soon McCauley's poems began to appear in many of the leading magazines of the period, including Pearson's, Crisis, and Opportunity. In 1919, McCauley traveled to England, where a number of his poems were published in several leading magazines. He returned to New York and continued to write. When Harlem Shadows was released in 1922, it received exceptional acclaim. After McCauley returned from his 12-year journey to Europe and North Africa, his writing career waned. He died in 1948 in Chicago, Illinois. A collection of his poems entitled Selected Poems of Claude McCauley was published in 1953, 5 years after his death. I'll read you his poem, If We Must Die. But I heard of that poem. I never knew a black man wrote it. And that's, we need to read about our forefathers, the people who came before us. And, Claude McCauley, he wasn't a success right away. And maybe he wasn't as successful as he wanted to be. I don't know. But he did everything he could, but he did not stop writing. He did not stop his dream. He kept on the journey. He kept on the journey, and that's what we all should do. When we have a beautiful talent, which all of us have something, we have to keep on the journey. And he did what? He was a waiter. He was a porter. He was a constable. He was an apprentice. And all that time, through all of that, he kept on writing. He kept on writing. He kept on doing what his heart told him to do. And that's what I love about reading about people that came before me and how they made it. And how did we get here? And how did we get this wonderful thing? Somebody did it. Maybe somebody suffered to do it. But it was in someone's heart, and they did it, and they gave it to us. And what a wonderful present, and what a wonderful present that they gave us, isn't it? Now, I'm going to read this. I'll stop talking here. If we must die, if we must die, let it not be like hogs, hunted and pinned in an unglorious spot, while round us bark the mad and hungry dogs, making their mock at our accured lot. If we must die, oh, let us nobly die, so that our precious blood may not be shed in vain. Then even the monsters we defy shall be constrained to honor us, though dead. O kinsmen, we must meet the common foe. Though far outnumbered, let us show us brave, and for their 1,000 blows deal one death blow. What though before we lie the open grave, like men will face the murderous, cowardly pack, pressed to the wall, dying, but fighting back. If we must die. By Claude McCauley. He has another poem, America. Although she feeds me bread of bitterness and sinks into my throat her tiger's tooth, stealing my breath of life, I will confess I love this cultured hell that tests my youth. Her vigor flows like tides into my blood, giving me strength erect against her hate. Her bigness sweeps my being like a flood, yet as a rebel fronts a king in state, I stand within her walls with not a shed of terror, malice, not a word of jeer. Darkly I gaze into the days ahead and see her might and granite wonders there, beneath the touch of time's unerring hand, like priceless treasures sinking in the sand. Claude McCauley. Well, those are our stories today. I hope you enjoyed them. And as I always say, read a little, write a little. Dream big. and I shall see you next week with more stories. Have a good week.